Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to share?
I don't.
I have to ask you the question. You posted a picture on Facebook.
Yes.
That read a number that made me fantastically uncomfortable. What?
I did. Yes, I did.
I don't think I think that's a number that you see, in the Middle East, in the desert,
And that was actually after it had dropped a degree.
Now, it hit 121?
122, yeah. Oh, in my car. I mean.
So that was in your car. Okay. That wasn't like an outside temperature.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much hotter my car got, but, maybe 5 degrees hotter than it was outside or something.
Is it, I mean, how do you, what's the word, live there?
Once it's at a certain point, it just is damn hot. It's like, once it's over 110, it's like, okay, it's hot, it's miserable. And even if it gets hotter, it doesn't change that fact too much. So it's hard to tell beyond that. It just, you can still feel yourself cooking, really, is what it's like.
That's what I imagine it to be like. You just feel yourself cooking.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, come try it sometime.
No, of course not. We had a comment. I read a comment on iTunes last week on the show about it was complimenting us on how rambling we are.
I guess that means all of this has been a part of our show so far.
Of course. And I wanted, this is follow up. This is follow up to that. I don't know if you saw this on our Facebook page, but we had a lovely comment from the actual commenter of iTunes. She said, thanks for the great podcast and for reading my rambling comment on the quote radio last week, signed April. And I thought that was so kind that not only was she kind enough to listen and long enough to comment on iTunes, but was still listening long enough to hear the following week when we read her comment on the air. I think that's a sign that we've made it with this show. But she also follows up. The reason I'm saying this is not because I'm fishing for more compliments from the lovely April. She writes, and this is for you to put on our to-do list. All right. She says, how about, now I just want to set up the reaction. I just want to get the reaction. So take a deep breath, close your eyes. She says, how about a Coen Brothers series?
Haven't we talked about that?
I don't know. I don't even remember now. We've done so many of these things.
We've talked about that because I think we talked about when I said Big Lebowski and you said, no, you don't like that movie.
I like so many of the other ones. Big Lebowski. I know I'm like the guy, and I'm a geek and a nerd, and a Coen Brothers fan, and I just don't like them. It's so. It's so. I can't stay awake through it. It's so dumb.
My.
I just can't get. Well, I'll try it again. I will do it again because this is this is good. I want to be a part of a show that embraces the counterculture. And occasionally we have to do an episode that's movies I don't like. I'm okay with that.
Well, we've done a few of those that we've both had hard times with, so that's okay.
So the week that I'm watching Big Lebowski, you can go back and watch Crystal Skull again. That's all right. I think it is a great suggestion, April, and it is definitely on our list of series to do. And we've got a couple we want to get through leading up to some other big summer hits that we have scheduled to talk about. But then we're definitely Coen Brothers definitely on the list. So that's coming.
It's that's a great task to give to all our listeners. Go onto our Facebook page and tell us all of your favorite Coen Brothers movies, and we'll
and
think
know
about
that
which ones might be worth talking about.
We'll just see where the natural weighting occurs. The Big Lebowski will be weighted maybe lower. I have the password to the Facebook page. I'm just saying.
That's right.
I look forward to hearing that, and I know that we have some listeners who have the voice of reason. What do you think about? Here's another one. The great. Remember, we did the live hangout, the Google Plus Hangout. That was so great. And one of our guest commentators was supposed to join us, didn't make it, and hopefully he'll be able to join us later. But he sent me this message, and he said, I think we need to, or should we consider reviewing Magic Mike?
Yes, Magic Mike.
I don't know what to
I saw that.
Tell me about it, would you?
It was magic.
What?
Oh, it's one of those movies you go to for points with the wife.
Yeah.
I guess that's
Is it?
why
It's just the Channing
I
Tatum, the angle.
That's my angle. Yes. No, I can say I went. I feel very comfortable with who I am.
See, the thing is, I didn't say. I've been on vacation. I haven't seen it, and all I know is that I'm a fan of the Soderbergh.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was my justification for saying it was okay to go.
So now that you've seen it, did it stand up?
Well, it doesn't scream, "Hey, Steven Soderbergh made this." But it's actually a much better film than I ever would have expected it to be. It's certainly no striptease, which really was the version of the strip dancing movie for guys to go and enjoy.
For guys to go.
To go to watch striptease.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying you said that they could go enjoy it, and I just said, or they could just go.
Or they could just go, because it was a pretty terrible movie.
It was a pretty terrible movie. And what about the other one with the girl from the show with the like Disney Showgirls? Yeah. What about that one?
Yeah, that was the other one that was absolutely abysmal. Although in its awfulness, it has become a cult classic in some strange way that saddens me a little bit, because it really is just a terrible movie.
It's a cult you just don't ever want to be a part of.
That's right.
Which is a bad way to start for a cult.
Because they're going to be drinking Kool-Aid at some point.
Watching horrible stripper movies. So if what I'm hearing you say is at the bottom of the list would be Showgirls, and then we would have striptease, and then Magic Mike. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
God.
This is a weird list for us to be putting up on our site, but there's the list. The stripper list, the striptease list.
Oh, that's
my
horrible.
God. Goodness gracious me.
Well,
so anyway, yeah, that's the ranking.
I'm going to throw it out to Facebook. If you think we should do a whole hour on Magic Mike, we're going to do it. Tell us on Facebook. We're going to find a way to talk about that movie. That triple
series will not include striptease or
triple
Showgirls.
dog dare. And
to find another way to include those. We could do 21 Jump Street.
Oh,
see, do a little Channing Tatum thing, or we could do a Soderbergh thing. Although I think we could find better Soderbergh movies to do, like Traffic, Out of Sight.
Oh yeah, God, there are a
Sex, Lies,
lot
and Videotape.
Sex, Lies, and Videotape was a great movie.
Yeah.
See, there's so many of them. Why did he this was a moneymaker. He was doing this for them. This was his movie to make money. Who was it who said that? Sometimes you just got to make money.
It was our pal
that we also like. That we
John Patrick Shanley.
Yes,
why he chose to make Congo.
Yes. That's imminently forgettable film.
Oh, yes, right. Yes.
Well, so there are a couple of trailers to talk about. Okay. The trailers I bring to the table were like just sort of context shock trailers for me. Okay. And then you bring like these, wow, awesome trailers. I bring these like, oh, here's a little intimate little character piece. And you bring, boom, it's a new Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, sorry. I did go that way.
God, Trump. Queen of Hearts, Trump.
I couldn't even find one of yours. What was the first one that you said?
Well, I said, Why Stop Now?
Yeah, I couldn't find that one.
That's a new Jesse Eisenberg.
Didn't look hard enough.
It's a new Jesse Eisenberg movie where he plays a piano prodigy dealing with, it's the day of the big audition. His mom's a recovering drug addict. And from what I gather, he has to go, she doesn't qualify for detox or insurance or something. Doesn't go unless she, I guess it's unless she comes in high. And so they decide, mother and daughter, or mother and son, that, it's a good idea to go try and buy some drugs so that she can get high and actually go into detox. And it's a madcap adventure leading him to his audition, and I hope she gets some help.
And the pleasure of drug use.
Yeah. But you know what's in it? Who is in it? What is also interesting in it? And this is one of the reasons my two films kind of fit together, is because this is a Tracy Morgan film, and he is the drug dealer, and he has a cane, so it's a character piece. And so I think it's actually looks like an interesting film. Melissa Leo, Tracy Morgan, Jesse Eisenberg. Why stop now? Go check out the trailer for that. The next one that I had was what was the other one that I had? 2 Days in New York. I thought this one looks really interesting too. It's Julie Delpy and Chris Rock. Chris Rock is a DJ married to a French girl in New York, and her family comes to town, and her French family, and it turns out they're all crazy. So it's a fish out of water story. And what I really liked about this, did you watch the trailer?
I did.
Okay, so close to the end, there is a blurb that actually says, quote, "almost as good as vintage Woody Allen." I thought, that is critical praise.
Or is it underhanded critical?
Yeah, I actually don't know how to think about that, but it's Julie Delpy is very cute, and she wrote it and directed it and stars in it, and Chris Rock, I like the guy. I've always liked the guy. And so this looks like two interesting movies. They seem like small movies that are hopefully character-driven comedies that I think will be good to take the wife to. Better than Magic Mike. That's what I'm going to say.
And 2 Days in New York is Julie Delpy's remake of her film that she wrote and directed called 2 Days in Paris.
No, I did not know that, actually. See, that shows the research that I do for this show.
Yeah, it's with her and Adam Goldberg, so it's interesting that she recast Chris Rock for the stateside version of the story.
So did you see, have you seen the other story?
No, I haven't. I didn't even know that existed until I watched that trailer.
Fascinating.
And then I found it, so.
All right. So now let's do yours. Tell me yours, real quick. Just, just breeze by them.
Was quite pleased to see the new trailer for The Great and Powerful Oz, or Oz the Great and Powerful, or whatever.
Yeah,
I can't even say the trailer name correctly. But it's Sam Raimi's new movie, and it's coming out next March, and which actually makes me a little nervous about it, because March is typically a bad time to release movies, although The Matrix was a March movie, so.
Yeah.
But it's James Franco playing Oz the Great and Powerful, and then we have the three of the four witches of Oz. We have Mila Kunis, Rachel Weisz, and Michelle Williams. So I think it's going to be fun. It looks like quite a wild ride, and so I'm very much looking forward to that. Kind of a prequel, I guess you could say, to The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, they're sort of capitalizing on, Wicked. Feels there's this whole Wicked vibe, and word has it that the movie is being made.
Yes.
And though I've seen no evidence to the fact, but apparently it's happening. What is interesting about this one is the writing team behind it. I think that David Lindsay Abaire has behind some movies that I really, really like. And I know one of your favorites, Rise of the Guardians, where there's a crazy weapon-wielding Easter bunny.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that.
But I really enjoyed Inkheart, and Robots is one of our favorites here for the kids around this place. So, I think it'll be interesting. He has apparently been signed to write the screenplay for the remake of Poltergeist, which was a great, great, great favorite of mine growing up. And so we'll see if...
Does it strike you as odd, though, that in his body of work, he wrote Robots, Inkheart, Rise of the Guardians, Oz the Great and Powerful, and Rabbit Hole? The story with Nicole Kidman and Aaron Eckhart and their child died in an accident.
Yeah.
How does that fit in?
Well, yeah.
All I can hear in my head is one of these things is not like the other.
No, right?
Like,
especially because because apparently he wrote the play of Rabbit Hole, which means the guy's got a bone for it. He's been thinking about it on his dark. He's gone dark. He's been dark for a long time. That's all I'm saying.
I'm gonna feel really bad if I find out like that his child had died and that was his.
I know, and I'm gonna blame. I'm gonna blame you. I'm gonna blame you for that. Okay, so that's the Oz and Great and Powerful. It looks really beautiful. It's very lush, no, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, it looks just vibrant and just, it's the Wizard of Oz. It's going to be like Alice in Wonderland, Tim Burton's recent one, taking this magical land in the world of modern cinema where you have all these digital tools and you can just go crazy and just do something really wild and amazing. And, I think it'll be fun.
We are talking about another classic tonight. Classic.
Tonight. And I have to apologize. Last week I said, Nazis. I was one war off.
You were. This was the Kaiser.
What was I thinking? It had been a while since I had seen it. So,
well, and you just sort of assume that movies made in this era, pretty much until we started making movies about the Russians, they were all about the Nazis. The bad guy, if it was a movie that dealt with global conflict, it was either the Nazis or then the Russians.
Yeah, I mean, The African Queen, which is what we're talking about, came out in 1951, and it was definitely a period when there were a lot of war movies coming out. And, it's easy to think of that as, right in with all the other World War II movies that were out there. But no, it's actually World War I.
World War I, Kaiser. This is okay. So we're doing this movie. We're talking about this movie. It's the second movie in the Jack Cardiff series, and you you like this guy. Did you watch the documentary?
I did. It was an amazing documentary. I definitely recommend anyone who is interested in filmmaking to go out and watch the documentary Cameraman about Jack Cardiff. It's really fascinating. Jack Cardiff is really by many considered the preeminent color cinematographer in the in film. He started at the beginning. I mean, he literally started when he was 4 years old in the silent era as a kind of an actor, and became started working in the camera department in his teens, and shot his first movie with Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger as the cinematographer, and never looked back. He did shot movies all the way until, he was shooting Rambo: First Blood Part 2 in the 80s. He's a busy man. He was still shooting in the 90s, and he passed away in 2009, but he was working pretty much up until his death.
How do you want to talk about this movie? How do you want to take this movie apart? Because I'm, just in kind of reading up on the movie, I'm really interested in the production of it, because it, the movie was shot all over the place, and the way they had to kind of finagle the boat, to actually shoot this film. I don't think we have a good concept of just how, production design has evolved for a movie like this, which seems like such an intimate production. Mm-hmm. It was not. It was very challenging to shoot, and so I'm interested in talking about that. Particularly how the movie was shot. But there are also these sort of cultural elements that are at work in the film with Katharine Hepburn and the ironically rugged Canadian boat captain played by Humphrey Bogart, who won an Oscar for his role in this movie.
His
there was
one and only.
His one and only, which is also a little bit strange. So, there are a number of things I kind of want to talk about, but how do you conceive of what is great in this movie? What is it that you latch on to when somebody says, why do you like this movie?
Well, gosh, I mean, there's so many things about this film that make it stand out, from John Huston and his direction, his script and his direction of it, the performances, the story, like you said, the story of making the movie. I mean, I think all of that, and just the nature of the story itself, are just all such wonderful things to talk about. So, I mean, I think we've got plenty to cover.
Well,
I say we start. Should we start with the production of it and then get into the film itself?
Well, let's do the other way. Let's do a very quick plot synopsis for those who haven't seen the movie in a while or haven't seen it at all. Let's just walk through what the movie is about.
Sure.
And then we'll talk about Cardiff and actually producing the film.
Sure. So we've got Rose, a woman missionary working in Africa, in near German-controlled Africa, and then the Germans invade and kill everybody in the village, including they don't really kill her brother, but they may as well have killed her brother. One of the regulars who passes by is Charlie Allnut, this Canadian boat captain who pilots the African Queen up and down the river, delivering mail and goods and all that stuff. She hops on the boat with him since the village has been destroyed. They head down. He's going to take her to somewhere safe. He tells her about this German boat that's in this lake, and because it's in this lake, nobody else can get through. None of the British can get through, and she decides that they should go down with the African Queen, make some torpedoes, and blow that boat up to help the Brits and to do their part in the war. And Charlie reluctantly agrees. They go off on an adventure down the river, and in the process fall in love, and they head down and they make it to the lake, and they blow the boat up, and that's the story.
Okay. They blow the boat up. Ish.
Yeah. Well,
I was soft selling it a little bit.
Yeah.
They tried, failed, and then accidentally blew the boat up.
The African Queen, the spirit of the
spirit
boat,
of the African Queen
rises from the lake.
The cold hand of Poseidon. Okay, so that's the nut of the movie. It is at its sort of core, it is a story of these two people, Katharine Hepburn and Humphrey Bogart, sort of discovering their affection for one another over the course of kind of the middle 40 minutes of this movie, and the adventures that they kind of find themselves falling into as they go down this river.
It's a very episodic story.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah.
I mean, and I don't know if it's the nature of boat movies, but it reminded me a lot of Apocalypse Now. And I know it's completely different film, but all I could think about was
it had a jungle, some water.
They go from one adventure to the next as they go down the river.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the rapids, and then you've got the fort, and then you've got the bigger rapids, and then the kiss, and then they're in love, and then breakfast in bed, and then you've got the hippos and the baboons, and then you've got the boat needs fixing, and then you've got the bugs, and then you've got the marshes and the leeches, and it's like
It is one right after another, but in the course of this, I think what Huston did that I think is really fairly elegant, in particular for 1951, was this portrayal of the individual sort of romantic arcs of Huston and Hepburn, and what I like so much about it is that we see, as they fall in love, which ends up happening pretty quickly. One episode they're not, and the next episode they really are. You see Bogart's affection for her grow as he starts calling her, old girl over and over and over again, which is sort of diminutive, sort of. It's a diminutive term of affection, and yet she is portrayed as I don't know, clumsily feminist. Like she sort of swings back and forth between being this very strong, kind of adaptive individual and into this doe-eyed, sort of young-faced innocent who doesn't quite yet know how to handle the relationship, which I think for Katharine Hepburn is the more challenging of the two roles. And where they come together is really sort of where the magic is, as both, as Humphrey Bogart is actually rendered, kind of the clumsy, innocent schoolboy on his boat, where, and this is where a lot of that intertwining kind of relationship drama occurs as they fall in love and discover each other's roles. I think, which is it's really interesting to watch. Like it ends up being a great dynamic, in spite of all the African jungle stuff and the Kaiser.
Right. It is. It's a very touching story to watch. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned the names they call each other. I don't know if I've ever seen a film where two characters have called each other by name or by a name so often.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like every line. Oh, Mr. Allnut.
Yes.
Yes, miss. It's like for the first half of the film, all you hear are Mr. Allnut and Miss, and it's like every line they're saying it. And then once they fall in love, right, and then it's Rosie and Charlie or Dear or
old girl,
old girl,
which is an interesting
like, wow,
one.
They
Clearly
only two people on the screen, and they can't stop using each other's names.
That's a really interesting point. You're absolutely right, and it's now, and I'm not going to be able to watch this movie the same way again because that seems so dumb. But the real, I don't know, sort of the real issue for her is why she lets him get away with calling her a nickname of a horse. Like, that's what you call a horse, old girl, or an old truck, maybe a tractor. Come on, old girl, you can do it.
See, I thought he was talking about his boat when he was saying old girl. Maybe I misunderstood.
Oh, no.
I wasn't paying attention. I'll have to watch it again.
Oh, that would change things. If I'm wrong about that.
Come on, old girl.
Come on, old girl. See, that's why I thought that was so weird, is because it seemed like he should be talking about the boat, but he kept looking at her while he was doing it. Anyway,
who knows?
So that's
but the nature of it, though, you're right. It's very much a love story, and I mean, really, it's a character piece. It's a character piece where we're watching these two people almost by themselves for the duration of the film, just the two of them, as they go from experience to experience, not just on the river. We do see the experiences on the river, like I was rattling off, but at the same time, we're experiencing them on their journey toward in a relationship, right? I mean, They start off not really. I don't know if they don't like each other, but it's not. It's like two people who just aren't the sort of people who normally would get together.
Right. That they shouldn't be sitting at the same table together, were it not for her and her brother's great grace in that opening sequence when they're sitting there listening to Bogart's stomach rumble. Right. Which is, to him something that's just kind of, that happens, and to them is something of great offense, and yet they are trying. They try so hard to be, appropriate and welcoming, because he brings their mail, and that's the role. He is the servant to their efforts. He brings them mail and supplies up the river in their missionary work. Yeah. And so that's the context of their relationship. It's anyhow. So,
but it's interesting metaphorically how their journey down the river is also it is kind of a story of love. And actually, I came across this really interesting review on this blog, Let's Not Talk About Movies, where the writer, who goes by Yojimbo, This is a great line from it, which I think works. It describes it really well. Love is an adventure, exciting but dangerous, making one vulnerable. But whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And at the end of the coasting, carousing, exploding journey, the couple are adrift but floating, no boat underneath them, but operating on their own power, swimming to an unseen shore, laughing without a care. To me, it is a story about love, and it's a metaphor of a relationship all the way through.
Yeah, and the part that sticks out for me of the passage you just read is that they are adrift but floating under their own power, and that is an interesting twist in the script, sort of a kind of an emotional twist when they are on the boat and they are being interrogated, or at least Bogart is being interrogated by the German forces. And her boat is brought up alongside, and she gets off. The whole tone changes, and they begin to recount with great pride what they have done to convert the African Queen into this torpedo boat, and to talk about what they were going to do, but how they failed, and yet they were so proud of what they had done together. And I think that's a twist that sort of can't be underscored enough, because that's the punchline to their relationship over the last hour, which is we are totally in control. Whatever happens, which in this case they're about to be killed by hanging, is under their own power.
Yeah.
And of their own accord. And I think that's a powerful twist put in there by Huston and James Agee.
And that wasn't actually the original end. They had a really tough time coming up with the right end for the script. And actually, I think, is it James Agee or James Agee? I wasn't sure how to pronounce his name. I just kept saying Agee. But anyway, he had a heart attack in the middle of working on this script, and wasn't able to finish working on it with John Huston, who went over to Africa to prep for the shooting. And so John Huston ended up having a couple other people help him. John Collier and Peter Vertel specifically came over to help him write the ending. And Peter Vertel actually came over to Africa to continue while they were shooting, and I think some of the scout and everything. And from his visit of working with John Huston on The African Queen, Peter Vertel went on to write the novel White Hunter, Black Heart, which, of course, was a semi-biographical story of John Huston making The African Queen that Clint Eastwood ended up making as a movie in 1990. So It's interesting how that all played out. But Peter Vertel and John Huston were actually the two who came up with the happy ending, and it was different from the way the book ended. And the author, C.S. Forrester, never was happy with the ending. He always wanted
with his own ending.
Yeah, he was never happy with his own.
So how did the book end? I mean, I haven't read the book.
They died. And my understanding is there were actually two endings to the book, one in the British release of the novel and one in the American release of the novel. And C.S. Forrester was unhappy with both of them. He didn't like either. And he told John Huston that. And so John Huston and Sam Spiegel, the producer on the film, really felt that they needed a happy ending for this film. And John Huston agreed, and that's why he brought Peter Vertel over. And they came up with the ending as it is. And I think it's a great ending, because in this metaphorical relationship that we're watching of the relationship as a boat journey, and the whole ending, everything you just described, how the two of them decide to take all of it, and own it, right? Mm-hmm. That becomes so powerful, and then the fact that the African Queen, ends up being the victor. It's like love conquers all in a way. It's I think it's a beautiful story, and the way that they chose to end it, I think, was so smart, and it was the right ending.
Well, yeah, I wonder. I mean, when you look at what they build up over the middle of the movie, they're building toward they're building toward that lesson, right? Why the story is so powerful for us, kind of why it speaks to us as almost comical as the end is. The sort of comical escape, which which is only comical when you by comparison when you sort of talk about Joe versus the volcano, which is kind of a similar thing. Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark, I should say, it's kind of a similar thing. You're working towards some sort of a lesson, and you have to ask yourself as you're telling that story, which is more powerful, the lesson that comes from loss or the lesson that comes from life,
right.
And what are you going to learn more from? And I think in this case, I totally agree. It seems like it would have been a real kick in the gut. And I'm not sure, how one would recover from after the tone, because the tone of the film is so positive. Every one of the episodes always ends with sort of a positive smile, kind of a thing. I don't know how you wouldn't change that.
And actually to that point though, I think part of the reason that John Huston felt it needed that positive ending was because once he had cast Huston and Hepburn, Bogart and Hepburn, and he had them in the film, and he saw the magic that they were creating and this fun that they were having, and the energy and all that, he realized, and I think both he and Sam Spiegel realized, we can't kill these two. We cannot.
Right.
It's going to be we're going to be cheating our audience if we kill these people.
Yeah. That's what it's sort of an illustration of the organic process. Of just sort of being responsive to what's going on in the story, and I think and the portrayal of the story, and I think it's more powerful as a result.
Yeah.
So production of this thing. This is what struck me, right? That they're shooting. First, you're going to have to talk about these cameras. Because that's one of the things that really struck me, is that they're shooting on this on this flotilla with the stage of boat on top of it.
Right.
And they're having to jump through some pretty significant hoops to actually shoot this little movie.
Yeah, well, and that's once they were shooting. There's plenty of pre-production stories before we would get to this. But yeah, the production of this, because they're filming on this little tiny boat. It was I can't remember how long the actual boat of the African Queen one. It was like 20 feet long or something. It's not a big boat, and you can see that when you're watching the film. So that you're right. They had the boat. They had a mock-up, kind of half of the boat on this big float where they could put the lights and they could put the camera, and all of the crew could be there, and that way they could be getting the close-ups of the actors. They had behind that, they had like a wardrobe, and then this whole string of all these boats that were kind of floating down the river, all tied together. And at the very last one, they had Katharine Hepburn's. She had her own private loo, because it was contractually agreed upon that she had her own private loo for the film, which of course in one part it actually got stuck in the brambles along this little tiny river they were filming, and they had to cut it loose because they were stuck, and she was furious because she had to go use the jungle like everyone else. Oh
Katharine.
So it was a very just that. And then the river itself. John Huston flew over to Africa. He really wanted to go to Africa. It was like a dream of his to go to Africa, particularly because he really wanted to kill an elephant, which is funny because he never actually did kill an elephant. And later in his life, he had a change of heart on that whole opinion and realized that killing an elephant would be a sin, and he decided that it was he was foolish when he was young, and he's glad he never actually did kill an elephant. But that was one of the reasons he went. And so he was flying around scouting, and they had this great gorgeous big river, but he decided it's too beautiful, it's too big, we need a smaller river. So they kept scouting until they found this little dinky river that was so compact. It had all of the jungle just overgrowing on all sides. And that was the river that he picked. And it was this tiny river that they had to get this huge chain of boats down. And what they would do is they would run the boats all the way up the river. They would turn them around, and then they would just float down all day long filming scenes. And then the next day they would run the boat up to the top of the river again, and they would float down filming scenes again. I mean, what a process. And this was with the Technicolor camera.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear about, because what we started talking about last week with the red shoes is the idea that this equipment was not simple equipment. This wasn't, you start to lose touch with the production process when you can shoot with cameras that fit in the palm of your hand and get, 4K cinema quality footage.
Yeah, people today don't realize what a film camera was back then, especially these Technicolor ones. I mean, they were huge. And not only was the camera itself huge. I mean, okay, first of all, the Technicolor camera, like I said last week, it had 3 strips of film running in it. So it had to house 3 full strips of film. And I am assuming that they were 1,000-foot rolls they are.
I was just going to ask that. So what does 1,000 feet get you?
It's like 11 minutes or something like that.
Okay, so for a day of shooting, 11 minutes per reel, you have an awful lot of film on a boat.
Yeah. And that's just the camera. And then, because the cameras were so loud, they had to have a blimp, which was this giant thing that went around the camera that silenced it, basically. So when they were rolling sound, you wouldn't hear the tick, 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 tick of the camera. So these things were huge. And so a shot like the magical shot in this film, which I think is just, it's so... it's heart-wrenching when you see the two of them completely just having given up. They're in the boat, stuck in the mud in the marshes, and they've basically kind of resigned themselves to death almost. And then Rose has that beautiful prayer, and then the camera pulls up from them, stuck on the African Queen in the mud. It pulls up through the marshes, and then it tilts up, and you see that just on the other side of the boat is the river and the lake. And it's a gorgeous shot. And it's just, it's so, it breaks your heart when you see that they're so close and they just have no idea. And the way they got that shot, they had a barge that they were on when they were filming that scene. They devised this ramp basically coming off the barge that ran down to the African Queen. They had the camera on a dolly on this ramp. And they had virtually every crew member who was not working holding a rope that was on the end of this dolly. And when they called action, everybody did a heave-ho, and they pulled this giant rig up this ramp so that so Jack Cardiff shooting could get this shot and could tilt up just at the right moment to get that shot. Now today, that sort of shot is like, almost standard in any project. You can get a techno crane with a great operator, and they can make a shot like that in a heartbeat. But back in the day, this was the invention of that sort of shot. And it's just amazing that these people were coming up with all of these things to make these things happen. And it's a beautiful shot. And when you see that and you realize the amount of work it took to get that, and that's where modern cinematography is coming from, it just gives you so much appreciation for what they did back then.
Oh, it really does. It really does. I'm just watching that, but again, it is fascinatingly stable. This sort of human powered crane shot is just beautiful.
Yeah. It is. It's remarkably stable. There's no bumps or hitches or anything. It just kind of comes up and tilts up and gives you the reveal. The music has that beautiful swell in it, and it really is just a gorgeous thing. And it's the sort of thing that you see in a movie that you don't even notice sometimes because you're so caught up in the story. And I think that's what happens so often when you're watching these films, especially now watching films back from that era, and those sorts of things you just gloss over. You don't even notice that it happened, but there was so much work to go into those sorts of shots.
It's that same sort of corollary we talked about with in the inverted Benjamin Button series, talking about Panic Room and the shot through the shots through the floor and through the cup handle. I mean, those sorts of things, if you're into the story, you don't see it, but those are, these are those shots that define the next generation of filmmakers' work.
Yeah.
And this is one of those movies where it starts.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true.
So there we are. Where what was interesting? What do you want to talk about more production? I have a question for you. It's on the restoration.
Sure.
So in what was it, 2009? I believe they did a restoration of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're going through this restoration process, you notice, especially, and I made mental note of it as I was watching the film, but I'm seeing it right now. There are some establishing shots right after that crane shot of Africa raining. And while most of the film looks good, these are some obvious shots that were not, it's like they were not restored. Does that make sense? Did you notice that? Am I crazy?
I think
just a lot of film shutter, and the color is not great. And
I think the shots were restored, but they can only restore it as good as it was actually captured, and to some extent, they can only restore it as good as the film has survived up to this point. There may be some shots where they just couldn't find a quality take, and I don't recall anything in particular that stood out to me. But it doesn't mean that there's not some shots in there that just didn't work out as well as others.
I would submit that they just didn't go far enough along the full Lucas, and probably we need some CGI. I'd like some replacement hippos.
Yeah, I think that's one of the funniest parts is when you have Bogey doing all the impressions,
doing the monkeys
with
and
the clearly added in sounds. Oh, that was great. So,
okay.
What was I going to say about that? Oh, but one thing actually about the restoration that actually I do think it makes it stand out a bit. There were a number of shots that were actually shot on a green screen.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
And those actually stand out. Well, it's funny. They stand out more, but at the same time, if you see what it looked like beforehand, while I say it, they stand out more. They actually stand out. They're noticeable, but they're not as badly done as they were back then, because they didn't have the technology to really create a clean green screen shot. And if you see some of the originals, I mean, they had, like, the actors had halos of green around their hair. I mean, it was just really not good. Now it looks a lot better, but it's still clearly
right
obvious that the actors are not actually in a particular location.
Well, and that was one thing I wanted to have you talk about, which was the actual geographic production schedule, right? They shot this movie in Africa. They also shot in, what did I say, Tunisia, and in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did they end up splitting that up?
Well, I think there were a big reason that they came to the UK is anything that took place in the water, like with them under the boat,
right,
trying to fix the axle and whatever had broken under there. Anything where they're swimming, any of that stuff, they could not shoot that in Africa because there was just too many dangers in the water, whether it be crocodiles or diseases, whatever it was, hippos. They couldn't put the actors at risk, and so they didn't go in the water. So all of the water stuff was filmed in England. And then on top of that, because of the water, they actually had a problem with the filter on the boat. Everybody started getting sick. They started getting dysentery and just horribly ill. They said everybody on the crew had the runs, and it was just a miserable experience for everybody. They're all throwing up, except for Bogey and John Huston, because they didn't drink water. They only drank whiskey, apparently. And so, but everybody else was just horribly ill, including Katharine Hepburn. In fact, the scene at the beginning where she's playing the piano,
she looks sick.
They had a bucket next to her, so between takes she kept throwing up. So everybody was so sick. She got so ill that they just had to go back to England. And so some of the last few things, some of the conversations, they just had to end up filming back there. And all of the stuff with the other actors, like her brother, played by, I believe, John Morley,
right,
and
the
Germans.
Yeah, the
all
Germans,
of the Germans
right.
were actually, all of that stuff was filmed back in England. So everybody was able to get better, and they finished it off there. But it was quite an ordeal. A lot of illnesses. They had, their camp was attacked by army ants, they basically had kerosene troughs around the whole place, and so as soon as these ants started attacking, they would light up the kerosene and burn all the ants, and it's just like crazy experience of making this movie. So,
oh goodness,
I have to read. John Huston has a great autobiography called An Open Book, and I have to just read this passage from his book. He came to Africa early to scout for this film. Again, he really wanted to kill an elephant. He just wanted to get out. And, he's an adventurer. John Huston kind of defines that type of man who really just wants to travel the world and have adventures, right? So he's in Africa. He's scouting. They find this village where they think they're going to make their movie. And they start building the compound where all of the actors and crew are going to live. While they're there, the chief brings on this guy to help them be the hunter, basically, find the food so that these guys can be fed. So this is a brief little passage from John Huston's book. There were 8 to 10 of us in this first group. We didn't have our commissary set up yet, so we contracted with a black hunter to shoot for the pot. I went out with him several times. He only had a muzzle loader, and he couldn't hit anything unless he was right on top of it. Game was scarce, and I wondered how in the hell he could manage to shoot enough meat for the pot, which was kept going constantly. The pot consisted of an indiscriminate sort of stew comprised of monkey, forest pig, deer, and you name it. Eventually, someone did. One afternoon, a group of soldiers marched into camp and arrested our black hunter. We weren't told why. They refused to tell us. But finally, King Paul, the black chief of the area, confided to me that villagers had been disappearing mysteriously. It seemed that when the hunter couldn't find game for the pot, he got the meat in the simplest possible way. I must say, I couldn't tell the difference in the taste. The black hunter was executed a few days later. I was thankful that the, quote, long pig, unquote, was served before the main group arrived. Only a few of us were privileged to dine so exclusively.
Oh, goodness.
Can you believe it?
That's fantastic.
Oh, this is filmmaking in the 50s for you.
That's what it is. You know what? Here's the thing. I think those involved in the business aren't doing a good enough job making it harder on themselves than they need to. We need to work to make things more challenging.
That's right.
Well, this is this film. It's John Huston.
Yes.
This is we did a very brief sort of Cardiff series, and this is a big transition from Cardiff to John Huston. We're going to do a couple of Huston films, and so this movie falls sort of in the middle of the early period of his career. He'd been making movies for 10 years. He'd written a bunch prior to that. How do you feel like this film fits in his canon?
Boy, that's a good question. I think he directed about 39 films. He wrote fewer than that, and he acted in a good number, but I don't know if I've seen enough of his films to really judge, but the films I've seen, I think I've seen pretty much all of his big films: Maltese Falcon, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Key Largo, Asphalt Jungle, African Queen, Moby Dick, all the way up through Prizzi's Honor and The Dead, and of course Annie.
Yeah, right.
He is a filmmaker who tells big stories, and seems to tell stories about kind of tough people having tough times, and African Queen, while it does have a happy ending, it definitely still has that sort of that feel to it. Charlie Allnut certainly doesn't seem like an upstanding guy. He definitely seems like the sort of guy who is probably a little down on his luck, and just the types of films that John Huston chose to make, I think, really strike me as just really good portrayals of character. He really was fascinated by characters and just told great stories about them. I guess that's what I would have to say about him.
Yeah, he's. I think he's. I guess the only thing I would add to that is that he is a guy who has a really fascinating ability to present the darker side of people in a way that's really pretty approachable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny that we would open the show talking about the Coen brothers. I think the Coen brothers have an interesting kind of ability to do that too. And I see a lot of a sort of character lineage in those, that connects the two as filmmakers. And plus, Huston is, I think, probably best known to me as Gandalf. And I think we have to say that out loud. Before there was Ian McKellen, people, there was Ralph Bakshi's Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and that's how Huston. Yeah, it was Huston's Gandalf.
He would have been, if he were alive, about the mid 70s when he was like in Chinatown. Yeah. That would have been a great Gandalf if they were making live action back then.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I dream about that. I don't know if I'm reading it to my daughter right now, the Lord of the Rings, the whole thing.
Oh, wonderful.
And Wormtongue just threw the Palantir out of the Orthanc. And all I can hear is John Huston. Anyway, so this movie did pretty well for 1951. Do you have your secret numbers? This was tough to find.
It was pretty tough to find, but I did see that it made about almost $11 million in domestically and this was 1951, dollars. So it did pretty well. It was a huge success. I mean, everybody loved it. And it's funny because they were. I think there was a little concern when the story was getting made. It was hard for them to get financed because it was this story about this older couple floating down a boat in Africa.
And who's interested in that?
None of the studios wanted it. If you'll notice when you watch the credits, none of the studios. There's no studio logo. It's Sam Spiegel. It's Romulus. It was a production company of two brothers.
Right.
And they financed it. They said, let's go make this in Africa. Let's do it. And they released it, and they made a ton of money. And John Huston, he was actually a little afraid of Sam Spiegel. He had heard some stories about Sam Spiegel and some of his shady dealings, and he was told by a friend that he should get out of his deal on the African Queen because it will bite him in the end. And he did, and he said that was the best intention but worst advice that he ever took, because if he had not backed out of his deal from the African Queen with Sam Spiegel, he would have made tons of money on it. But Sam Spiegel walked away with all of it.
Yeah.
So
beautiful. What do you? How do you wrap it up?
Well,
do you have closing words?
I just last thing. I think tying into our little Bogart that we had talked about before. I think, like we said, this was the one time that Humphrey Bogart won an Oscar, He had been nominated before for Casablanca. He had been nominated afterward for the Caine Mutiny. But this was the only time that he won. It was a fantastic character for him to play. Personally, I think that he should have been nominated for Treasure of the Sierra Madre. I think he's just amazing in that.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I think it's great that he won for this. It's a great character. Charlie Allnut's great. Rose is a fantastic character for Katharine Hepburn. This is just one of those movies that it's just such a fantastically simple, beautiful film. It's one that I think you could watch with kids. I guess once they kind of understand war and stuff like that. But it's just, there's nothing in this that is offensive. It's just a simple story, and it's beautiful with great characters, and it's definitely one that everybody should check out.
I absolutely agree. I think this is a movie that presents sort of the culture of relationships, and at a time when I think we were learning how to be in relationships with one another. And it does so by putting these two people in this wonderfully wild setting, and peels back the layers of how these two people learn how to kind of fall in love and be with one another. And I think that does it in a very sweet kind of a way, in spite of the fact that it is a movie in the master setting of a war that ends up being a fairly minor player in the real sort of sentiment of the film. And I think it is a terrific movie, and I'm glad we got to it on this on our list.
Definitely is one well worth talking about.
Where do we go next week? We're going to continue with our John Huston conversation.
Are we?
No, we're not. Maybe we are. Or are we?
Maybe not.
Did I miss a memo?
I thought our next series was the Bourne series.
Are we ready to start that already?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. Oh, I'm right there.
John Huston, our John Huston series.
Will continue.
Anytime you listen to a John Huston episode, it's likely going to be one of our episodes when we've been unable to get together to record an episode.
Why are you telling the secrets?
Oh,
I'm going to tell more. I'm going to tell more of your secrets. God, that's like pulling back the curtain.
Well,
go ahead, Mr. Oz.
We did have Oz. See, I'm just tying it all together again, right? You got to bring it back in. It's all about.
Oh, you did. Oh, you brought it in. Brought it in tight.
I brought something.
You brought something in. So's your face.
Ouch.
So I don't even know. I'm reading kids' books to my own. That's all I got. Good talk.
Sayonara.
We wanted to take a moment to thank you for your continued support over the years. It's hard to believe that we have been having weekly, in-depth discussions about movies since 2011.
That's right, 12 years and counting. Producing this show is a labor of love for us, but it does require a lot of time and effort each week.
If you enjoy our podcast and would love to help keep it going, there are some easy ways you can show your support. One is by using our Originals page to shop for the original source material that movies we've discussed were based on.
That's right. In Season 1 alone, we covered 13 films adapted from books or plays, from Charlie Kaufman's adaptation to David Fincher adaptations like Fight Club.
In Season 2, we covered even more, like Powell and Pressburger's The Red Shoes and The African Queen from our series about legendary cinematographer Jack Cardiff.
We can't forget about the 4 Jason Bourne movies we talked about. Love those movies. Well, the original trilogy, at least.
For our Richard D. Zanuck series, we did Jaws, Rush, Big Fish, and more. And for our horror series, we talked about John Carpenter's The Thing, which was adapted from Who Goes There?
We did our first great car chase series with movies like Bullet, The French Connection, and Drive. And for the holidays, we did Preston Sturgis's Christmas in July.
We had a great John Huston series with adaptations like The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
And for our baseball series, Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Have I told you lately how much I love that movie?
Yeah, I think you have. Plus, our Magician series and Heist film series had adaptations as well.
Tons of page-to-screen gems. Listeners can find the details and links to the original material at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play, or movie you buy through our links helps support the show, and it's no extra cost to you.
So dive in and get your next read today. thenextreel.com/originals has all the films adapted from other sources that not only we have covered, but all of the shows on the Next Reel family of podcasts. Check it out and get reading.
Support the show and build your reading list. It's a win-win. Head to thenextreel.com/originals.